Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to our Monday Motivation Spotlight series. I'm delighted to see you all here today. Let me just spotlight myself so that we can see where we're going. I'm Lesley Kaplan, your host for the series. I'm Israel. We're going through a difficult time right now, more than just difficult. This series was started with the aim of giving inspiration and uplifting us all here, which is what it's all about, as well as those that are going to be watching the recording, and as well as giving inspiration and exposure to Israeli businesses and to individuals. So a double whopper and everyone benefits, win-win for all. So today we've got something slightly different. For those that are watching the recording, you'll be seeing only the first part of the Monday Motivation. But for those of you that are with us live, and it's always great to join live, because that way you also get to participate in the chat. Please keep yourselves on mute as always, and feel free to write any words of inspiration, anything you'd like to do in the chat, as well as share if you're a business owner. Some of you are, some of you aren't. If you are, feel free to share details of your business as well. As I mention every week, this series is co-sponsored by ACI with thanks to a grant by the Reinhardt Foundation. And we're also co-hosted and co-sponsored this month by Israel Properties. So thank you so much to our co-hosts and to our co-sponsors. So today, as I said, we have a double treat for you. We're going to be finishing the Monday Motivation Spotlight a couple of minutes early at about 9:25, 26. We've got an awesome guest for you today, who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. And then we're going to take a 3-4 minute break. Don't log off like you're used to doing. That's if you plan on continuing with us. Obviously feel free, you want to, you don't want to, that's up to you. Even if you're not in business, I think the second part will be very interesting to you. We have a great speaker, Chava Shainovitz, and she's a digital marketer, and she's going to be talking about AI, which is the hot topic these days. Yes, even during the war, there's a lot we can do. We also have breakout rooms. She's going to be talking about social media. It's a professional women's networking forum, and as I announced to the men in the room, we're delighted you have Protexia. You joined for this part, so we're delighted and welcome and invite you to stay for the second part as well. We have 2 sets of breakout rooms, and we're going to gain lots of information. So feel free to stay for one or both. There will be some who will be joining at 9:32. So without further ado, I'm going to take the spotlight off from me, and I'm going to spotlight our speaker for the morning. Welcome to my friend, Jenny Sassoon, who I had the pleasure of meeting a few years ago, very shortly after she made Aliyah. How many years ago is that now, Jenny?
Oh, 15?
15, wow. And I said just a few. Okay, so it's more than just a few. I remember we hosted Jenny and her husband and family shortly after I made Aliyah. And Jenny and I have stayed in connection, since then. Career-wise, I've, looked and enjoyed following her career and see what she's doing. So Jenny is a social worker by training. She's also a certified coach, and she empowers her clients to basically lead the fulfilling life and career that they want to do, and a lot more. So Jenny, I'm going to say, take it away and share with us your amazing words of inspiration. At the same time, I just want to tell you, feel free to write anything in the chat, also to Jenny, also to anyone else, any words of inspiration, as well as about your businesses. Thank you, Jenny. Let's go.
All righty. Thank you. First of all, I wanted to acknowledge you, Lesley. Just thinking about your energy and the way you continue to be able to motivate us, not just now. I was thinking about it also during Corona. Somehow you come up, you find a way to move through these challenging times and find a way to continue to inspire us. And I'm just grateful to that. And I'm sure everyone here also appreciates that very much. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that, because I was thinking about that as well. I don't know how you do it, but I'm wondering if you want to do one of the spotlights so that we can understand where you get that energy from to help us.
Well, I will tell you that it helps keep me positive too. So it's definitely, it's not only a win-win, it's a win-win-win. Okay,
So it's a motivation.
Because planning these and having the inspiration from all of you and keeping me busy is definitely what helps keep me positive as well.
All right.
So
Everyone, okay, now we know the secret. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm going to do today in terms of a share. I'm actually going to bring you back in my life to a time that was a dark time. But don't worry, we're not going to stay there. As a good friend and colleague of mine once said to me, she said, Jenny, you don't like to stew. You don't like to stay in doom. So don't worry, we're not going to stay there. But we're going to go back there. I'm going to bring you back there with me and talk to you about the lessons that I learned that really helped me to move forward in a very powerful way. And these are lessons that I believe, that I feel strongly that we can apply today to our situation, to our own life, to our businesses. And the way I'm going to do it is, as I'm sharing the story, I'm going to take a pause and just share a lesson, even just within that part of the story. And in the end, I'm going to share the main lesson that I hope that we can all take away and apply to our life right now, and to our businesses, to help us to move forward powerfully. So I invite you to join me to come back. A number of years ago, as Lesley mentioned, I made Aliyah 15 years ago. So it was before then, way before then. It was when I was engaged. I was going to be getting married in a few months' time. And I was very excited for this new beginning, to start this new life. At the same time, I knew that there was something that very, very important, very big, that I needed to do in order to move forward into this new life, into this new beginning, in the way that I wanted to, in a healthy way. And that meant to me that I needed to confront the person that abused me when I was a young child. And it was really, really hard. I remember sitting in the corner at the top of the stairs in my parents' house. I was living there to save a little money before getting married. And I was in a corner. It was dark. It was the middle of the night. I must have woken up in the middle of the night. And I remember holding my knees close to my chest and just rocking back and forth, knowing that I needed to do this big thing. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I knew that it had to happen. And I was really scared. Thankfully, I had the support of my family, of my parents, also of some friends, and not all my family members, mainly my parents, especially my mother. And that's the first lesson that I want to share, that I think we can apply to our times, that it's easier for us to do hard things and challenging things when we have the support of others. It doesn't mean that we can't do hard things alone, but it's easier to climb this mountain together when we have each other's support. So let's come back to the story. So I knew that I needed to do this, and I was feeling very, very afraid, because it meant that I was going to be kind of really blowing up what has been a family secret. And I remember feeling just shaking, and there was a lot of prayer that went into this. But again, the thing that was motivating me, as I mentioned before, is because I had this vision of what the life that I wanted to create, the life that I wanted to have, building a life on truth, building a life, that's built on healthy relationships. And so that's the second lesson to take away from here, from this story, which is that when our vision and mission is clear, it's easier to move through those scary things, to do those things that feel scary to us. So let's come back to the actual day that I am going and knocking on this person's door. And I remember taking that ride up the elevator and my heart beating so fast. I didn't know what to expect. I just knew that this is what I was going to do. And make it up that elevator, knocking on the door, still shaking, walking into the apartment, sitting down, and I'm right across from the person. This person is my grandfather. And I take out, the first thing I do, and it sounds pretty dramatic, it was dramatic, I take out cash. This is cash that he had given to us as a gift for our engagement, for our wedding. Take out the cash, I put it on the table, and I said, I don't want this. I don't want to have anything, you're not in my life. You're not invited to my wedding, and you're not a part of my life anymore. And in that way, I was saying, I'm putting this aside, I'm done. And I did it. I did the thing. And it was big. And I said, this is what you did to me. This is what you did to other people that I know and love. And this is the reason. And we're done. It's over. I didn't know what his reaction was going to be. I didn't anticipate that. I just knew what I came to do. And what happened next was really interesting, actually, because he reacted in a very intense way. He was yelling and screaming and cursing, and in that moment, I was just like, wow, none of that mattered. All of that yelling and kicking and screaming, it was just so clear that I was standing on the right side, that I was on the side of truth, and the other side was, we'll say the bad guys, the evil, whatever, however you want to call it. It wasn't the side, it was the dark side, we'll call it. And I felt so powerful, and I didn't need to yell, kick, and scream. And I think that that's another lesson that we can take away also now, is that when we stand in our truth, we can stand up to the evil. We don't need to kick and scream. And so when we connect to that truth, we are so powerful. And so I did the thing. As I'm leaving, he's still yelling and screaming, and it didn't get to me. It was like untouchable. I was untouchable. It didn't matter. I did what I came to do for the reasons that I wanted to. I knew, and I was, had this armor. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go into my new life without this. This is fantastic. I felt free from it in a way. I come home. The first person that I call is my fiance, who's my husband now, who people know. And, if you know Rabbi Sassoon. And I tell him, so he wanted to know what happened. So of course I shared the story with him, and I just say exactly what happened. And he's listening, and he says, wow, he's like, you're my hero. And I said, and I thought about what he said. And I said, you know what? I think I'm my own hero. And so I thought doing that thing, and we had an incredible wedding, and people still talk to us share with us how powerful the wedding was. And I think it's because I went in with this energy. But the thing is, I thought that I was done. I thought, okay, I did this thing. I'm my own hero. And I thought that moving forward, everything would be, life I wouldn't have these challenges anymore. The challenges that I grew up with, the darkness that I carried with me. But I was wrong. So let's fast forward about a year or two into our marriage. I started experiencing just some personal challenges, and all these negative thoughts came up. The same type of thoughts that I was, that I had before, let's call it the big confrontation. And I said, why are these thoughts coming up again? These victim kind of thoughts. What's wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me. I'm damaged. And so at that point, I said, it's a good time to seek out some support. So I went to therapy, and it was a good experience. It was a positive experience where I was validated for the feelings that I was having. It was hard for me to feel angry, and I'm feeling guilty about feeling angry, all of those things, everything that comes up. I remember feeling validated for my feelings, that it was okay to be angry, that this was a very understandable response. And then one day I show up to a session, and my therapist says, you've done amazing work here, and we're done. And I said, we're done? She says, okay, we're done. So I said, okay, I've done everything that I could do. I've done the work. And so I basically kind of surrendered to the idea, or accepted rather the idea, that this was just my lot, that I was just going to carry this with me and really try to push against this and try as much as I can to build the life that I wanted for myself, but always with this resistance, always with kind of pushing against something that was difficult. And so I said, okay, this is my lot. Things are just going to be, quote unquote, harder for me because of what happened. There's nothing I can do. So I did whatever, I was already a social worker at the time. I was working and doing meaningful things and good things. But I always had this with me, this kind of yoke, this feeling, this heaviness with me, or this victim mindset, I would call it. And now we're going to fast forward to my coach training. And I'll just tell you a little bit of how I got there. So as I mentioned, I was working as a social worker. I was working at what was called then the Board of Jewish Education. And my job, I was a program director, and I was coordinating training and workshops for mental health professionals and educators in the school system in the greater New York area. And a person that was recommended to me said, invite this. I never heard of the term coach before, right? So that was years ago when it was new. It was new then. Now we're familiar with it. What's this coach? And to give a training to the teachers, and he was talking about self-esteem. And I was observing all the trainings that I had coordinated, and I'm listening to him, and I said, you know what, this sounds really good. This language, it sounds empowering. And he was putting together a training, and I said to my husband, went back home, I said to my husband, I said, okay, because I was pregnant with our third, I said, okay, listen, here's the deal, okay? Because we were already planning our aliyah. And I said, the deal is we're having this baby here in America, and I'm doing this training, which was a year-long training, and then we'll make aliyah. I didn't know why. That's what I felt. I felt very strongly that this is what we're going to do. Okay, fine. So a few weeks into the training, we have this assignment that's called, the assignment was to write a signature story. And it's a story that says a kind of a why we do the work that we do. What is the inspiration? What's the motivation for the work that we're doing? Why do we want to go, for example, and help people? And so I knew what story I was going to write, about. I was just like, of course I'm going to write about the big confrontation, right? And I feel very good about this story, and I write about that, that dark time, and I even go even more deeply into how that felt, and then finally the triumphant moment that I do the confrontation. I feel really good about this story. I'm waiting for all this wonderful, this accolades from my instructor, who she called each of us individually to give us feedback on our stories. So I'm looking forward to this phone call, and she gets on the phone, and I'm waiting for her to give me all this praise, and it doesn't come. And I was like, oh, okay. And she says, it's a very powerful story, Jenny. This is what I noticed in your story. What I noticed is that you're still very much full of anger, pain, and blame. And I was thinking, and I might have even said this to her, well, yeah, that's my therapist said that's okay to do. It's, to be able to do that. And she says, I get that. But if you want to walk out into the world, and if you want to help people move forward in a powerful way, and if you want to get past this, really past this, every single word in your story needs to come from a place of you taking full responsibility. And I heard her words, and I knew what being responsible meant, but I never heard anyone say in my context, it was more like valid to feel the pain, valid to feel the anger, valid, take full responsibility. I didn't really fully understand what she meant. And I had a lot of conversations with her, and it was hard. Those were hard conversations because it meant that I couldn't blame anyone anymore. It meant that I couldn't complain anymore. And it wasn't easy. But I also knew that if this was my ticket out, that I wanted to do it really badly. So I learned everything I could about how to take full responsibility for my life. I read books like Choice Theory, which I highly recommend, and by Dr. William Glasser. And as I'm reading this book, and I started, it's one thing to read a book, as we know, one of the, about theories and about, it's another thing to apply them to our life. And so I started applying these concepts to my life, and I realized something. I realized that anytime I thought about the abuse, or anytime I got angry, or I was doing that to myself. I was hurting myself. And the good news about that is that meant I can change that. So I started to change my questions also. So instead of asking myself or asking the big questions like, why did this happen? Or how could it happen? Or it shouldn't have happened, whatever, all of those questions, I started to shift my focus. I started to look towards what I wanted. What do I want to create? What do I want to move towards versus continue to run away from? And that is when I finally felt free. And I think that is the big lesson that I took away, and that I feel that we can all apply to our lives right now, to our experience right now, to help us to move forward powerfully is to take full responsibility. And what I mean by that is to look towards the things that we want to create, to look towards what it is that we want to move toward and build for ourselves. So how can we apply this to help us to move forward powerfully? I like to say that there's like a three-part, like a recipe. There are three parts to this recipe. There's the awareness, responsibility, and action. So the first step is to create awareness. What is it that we want? What is it that we want to move towards, whether in our own life, for our business, for our relationships, for the nation? That's a big one, right? It seems big. It's all big. So the first, and that's sometimes the hardest part, because often we know, and I hear this from my clients often we know what it is that we don't want. But sometimes it's harder to think about, and I think you'll agree with me, what it is that we do want. But that's what's important, because like an artist, who with a blank canvas, and there's a book that's called The Path of Least Resistance, where the author talks about this. So like a blank canvas, we want to think about what is it that we want to create? What is it that I actually want? Not what I'm moving away from, but what is it that I want? And then the second step is responsibility. By responsibility, I mean, we want to think about what is in our power, what is in our control to be able to create that. What can we do, right? A lot of times the reasons we get stuck is because we're focusing on the things that we can't do. So in order to be able to really tap into our power, we want to think about the things that we can do based on who we are, based on our talents and strengths, based on our energy level, based on our support systems, whatever it is, what is it that we can do? And then once we clarify that, then the next part is to take action, to do those things. And when we put all those pieces together, and that's what I found in my life, when I started to think about what I want to move towards, that's where, and just building that, what kind of life do I want? What kind of relationships do I want? What do I want for my career? And putting that recipe into practice, that's when everything changed. That's when I was finally free. And that's what I want for all of us. I want us to feel powerful, and that's how we could all move forward, I believe, in a very powerful and empowered way. And just one last thing to share is that what's been helping me is, it's very hard, like listening to the news and hearing about everything. As Lesley mentioned, it's a very challenging time. What helps me to move forward is I realize, I think about our history, and I realize we're not always going to be here. We're going to, history has taught us that we come out on the other end, that there is the light at the ends of the tunnel. There is the light after the darkness. And that's what gives me hope. And I think about, what is it that I want? What is it that I want? And now I can start thinking about the things that I could do in order to create that with that hope. So I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to end now.
Right, absolutely. That was so inspiring, Jenny. I don't think anyone can say that they didn't find something inspiring from that. So thank you so much. I'd like you now just to take like 1 or 2 minutes, and even while we're connecting to the next session, to think about what Jenny has said. Not everyone goes through what Jenny has gone through, thankfully, but we all go through other elements and other things in life. So think about what Jenny has said and the tips and the things that she mentioned, and take some points away and see how you can apply it directly to your lives in terms of moving forward, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's in your career, whether it's in a relationship, in your business, whatever it is. And those 3 things that you said as well, awareness, responsibility, and taking action, are so totally true, because without the awareness, we don't have that. So Jenny, thank you so much for being an amazing spotlighter today. I would like to remind you not to click end when you leave, because we're moving forward with an amazing session. I just want to wrap up the session and end the recording, and then I'll carry on with some words. So you've been viewing our Monday Motivation Spotlight series. Thank you once again officially to our speaker and our spotlight, Jenny Sassoon, friend and colleague. And I invite you to, if you want to re-listen to what Jenny said, this is going to be available later today on Spotify. It'll also be on YouTube. Either just type in Monday Motivation Spotlight, or type under my channel, Lesley Kaplan channel, and you can view this as well as other recordings from previous events. So we meet every single Monday. Thank you again to our co-hosts, ACI, as well as to our sponsors for the month, Israel Properties by Stammelman and Partners. So I'm going to officially end this recording